Hello and welcome to a walkthrough for Django for Everybody. So the walkthrough that we're going to be doing is the walkthrough for the My Articles, which is really focusing on the notion of owning rows in a model. And what I've got going here is I'm logged in twice. I'm logged in one with a user ID of 1 and the other is a user ID of 2. So let's just do a quick demonstration of what really owning rows in a model is. So here I'm logged in as my first user, and now I'm logged in. I'm using a separate browser because this is Safari and this is Firefox. You can't just do this with tabs because the cookies are shared between tabs, and so you can log in and log out. I want to just be logged in simultaneously. Okay, and so I've got two of these tabs. Refresh. So you'll notice that the edit and delete buttons show up differently for different users, and that's because this row in the table lawnmower belongs to this user, user number 2, and this row, these two rows belong to this user. So if I take a look at administration and I go down into groups, not groups, users, now I can kind of hover, figure out that CSEV is 2, you can kind of see at the bottom there. And DJ Free is user 1 and C7 is user number 2. So those are the primary keys in Django's user table. And now if I go and I take a look at these articles, you will see, and looks a lot like if you were looking at, say, your autos. Here's the rows or the models in articles. And if I look at lawnmower, you see that there is a title, some text, and the owner is a drop-down. And that's because this is a one-to-many field. This is a one-to-many field between the articles and the users. And then if I switch to a different, so that's CSEV. So CSEV owns the lawn. Yeah, CSEV owns the lawnmower. I'm logged in as DJ Free here. Oh, no, here. That's my name. I'm DJ Free. And if I switch to the trombone, we'll see that that one belongs to DJ Free. Now I can sit and edit this in admin, right? But that's not the point. The point is to build software. If you'll notice, when I create a new article, it doesn't ask me what user it was, right? So this is where you would say Dodge or whatever when you were doing cars. So this is like a race car, slightly used, neon. So now I have another one, right? And so the key thing is it looks like a create from things we've done before. And if I look at my articles, here's this, but somehow magically this owner field is populated. And that's the essence of owned rows, is we've got a row, a column, and these are marked, and we know in all our code, we know the difference, for example, between things we own and things we don't know, things we own and we don't own. So if I hit refresh over here, there's a slightly used race car, but slightly used race car, but I can't edit it, right? So that's the ownership. Now, I don't know where to start. There's a lot to cover here. Let me show you. I don't know. Okay, I'll just start with where we always start. Let's start with, I'm running this locally. I don't know what that bug is there. That's not a bug. So this just looks kind of like your autos. If you look at it, it looks pretty much like the autos. I might add a mileage or price in there or something. The only thing that's really different at all is this. There's a foreign key. Now in your autos, you had a foreign key to makes. And the key difference here, the only thing that's new is this idea of where the foreign key is pointing at. Now the problem is in Django, there is actually a table that all these users live in. And I can probably come over here and type tables. And I can see it. I think it's probably here. So let's just try saying select star from auth user. So we should see a bunch of rows. And so there are my users. CSEV, it's all jammed together in DJ Free. So this is row 1 for DJ Free and CSEV. So there is a table and a model. The difference is we're not allowed to know that this is the user model in the auth application. And so what happens is we have to let Django tell us what the name of that model is. And so we go into settings, which is settings.py actually. And we're going to pull in the settings.py. And the default is auth user model, and that's the name of the model. And so this is a foreign key to a place that we don't exactly know, but Django will tell us and put in a string here. If we were to print this out, we would see what that is. That's just a string, but it's not a string we mess with. On delete cascade, that's just normal. The kind of parent row, the one row is in users. And if you delete a user, that means that all of the rows that belong to that user will get deleted because on delete cascade. I'm choosing that as the model. And so you see created at, if we go into back into the, you see all of these things. Now created at admin doesn't show. It's pretty smart knowing about created at and update, so it doesn't bother doing that. And it actually updates them automatically, so it knows something about created at and updated at in admin. Okay, so that is our model. If we were to take a look at my arts article, we will see that there is a foreign key right there. There's a foreign key, and if we say select star from my arts article, we will see that there is a foreign key in there. So this row belongs to user 1, this row belongs to user 1, that row belongs to user 2, and that row belongs to user 1, which is perfectly reflected here. So now I am user 1, so I can edit 3 of them. And now I am here with user 2, and I can edit 1 of them. So I'm editing the ones where I own it. So ultimately, we're going to write a bunch of code so that these numbers are properly updated. So when you add the article, it works the way you want it to work. Okay, so let's just take a look at urls.py. It's pretty boring. This looks just like autos. I probably hoisted up success URL here, put that in the as view as a parameter, and so that makes my views even simpler. My arts : all points to that view. I think it actually is kind of prettier to put it in here because this is sort of a URL place, and so it's not in my views. So that makes my views really succinct. And so it's like what you did once you got your autos down to like just using the generics. And so I have a list, a detail, a create, an update, and a delete. And I have a model called article, which I just showed you. And I am going to reuse some general purpose views for owner kinds of rows. Now, these are not from Django. These are from me. I made them. And now I'm using them. So article list view extends owner list view. And then I can put all my things in there. The success URL, actually, I don't need that here, but for create view, I do need a success URL, but for create view, that success URL comes right from here. So I could have put it either here or I could have put it here. For me, it just kind of, after a while, I think this is prettier because now I can look all, the names of my arts, etc. So that's kind of nice. Okay, so here's views. We're going to come back to this. All the brains of this operation are in owner list view, owner detail view, create view, update view, and we'll look at that last. So that's where the hardest part is. But let's first look at the template. And so here's the template. This looks a lot like your autos. The only real difference here is that this edit and delete button is inside of an if statement. So it's, article update, article ID, article delete, article ID. That's the same. You've done that, right? But if all it says is if article.owner is equal to the current logged in user, article.owner is one of the article lists, and that's just one of the fields in the model, which happens to be a number, but we're given this user for free, right? It just hands us user, and so we can compare it. So if this is one that we own, we show this link, and if it's not one we own, we don't show the link, right? So we don't show the link for the ones that we own. Now, I hope by now you realize that we have to also protect, right? So if this is number 4, right, and if I click edit number 5, but what if I just change this to 4? We still, just not putting up the link does not mean that we can't have someone go to that link. So I'm cheating by putting in this link, but this is going to blow up, right? And so we'll show you how just because you don't put the link up doesn't mean that people can't go to the link. They can guess what the link is. I just did that. I went to an article I could update. I noticed the primary key of one I could not update to be 4, and then I went to 5, and then I just edited it, changed it to 4, and I attempted to update 4. So it's not good enough just to not show the link. That's actually not security. That just is prettiness, usability. Don't show a link that is going to blow up if you click on it. So that's not really protecting us. This if statement is not really protecting us from clicking on or attempting to go edit or delete. It's just not showing it if it's not going to work. Okay. And again, article.owner is just a column in this model, and user is the current logged in user. Okay? Okay. So what we'd seen before is I would create a view and then use it in my urls.py, and it would extend another view. So now it's time to take a look at where this view is being defined. And so here's our view, generic view, the generic list view, delete view. These are the generic ones, and all I'm really doing here is I'm creating a class called owner list view that extends list view. Now, it pulls in everything that list view is, and you'll notice I've added nothing to it. And I really could, because the list view doesn't really care. It's not really doing anything other than the fact that that value is in the models, so it's going to come in, right? So I could have made this be list view, but I just want it to be pretty. I want to make it so that I could just say owner list view, owner detail view. And so you'll notice that I'm not making any changes at the moment of inheritance. I'm not changing owner. So owner list view is exactly the same as list view, and owner detail is exactly the same as detail. I just did it to make it pretty in case later maybe I want to add some. But now we get to owner create view. Owner create view is something that matters a lot. So there's 2 things we've got to do for owner create view. So let's go ahead and start to add an article. So the first thing is there is no field here for which user it is. It would be kind of silly, and I can actually mess this up. So if I go to create view here and I add user, then if I hit refresh on the create view, come on, back up. Oh, it's not user. Owner. So if I add it to that list, and part of this, what's going on here, is there is both a model and a form. This fields equals is informing the form, and the form is the user interface. So look at this. I'm allowing the user to specify it, and now they can set the owner. Pretty convenient. Well, that's not what we want. So that's why in this create view, you say, don't let them set the owner. I don't want them to see the owner, because it takes a little while for this thing to restart. Okay, now it's restarted, and I can hit refresh. So when it was blowing up, it was just because I was coming here too fast. What is that? I don't know what that is. So go back to the views. Maybe I have some tiny little bug. I'll dig through that bug later. It's working. It's probably passing the auto grader, so I'm pretty happy. So remember that there are 2 sides to this. One is the database side, and that's what the model deals with. And then there is a form. So these views, this list view, if you recall, once we tell it the model, it actually makes a form. So in this create view, it's making a form from article, copying all the fields in article or the fields according to this little list. And so that's why we're doing it. So the key there is we're explicitly not putting owner in there. and we're not putting created at or updated at. If I wanted to put created at in here, whoop, 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 I'd say, hey, let's show them created at. Okay, let's refresh. Okay. Oh, okay. So again, it's trying to take a model, it's trying to go from the article model to make a form, and it's not an editable field, so it's mad at me. So I'll go back and fix it. I'm sorry. Okay, you get the idea. It uses this list of fields to make a form. The same for article and for update. In fact, the update and the create are so equivalent that the template for them is shared. It's basically, we'll talk about crispy tags separately in a different little video. The form is the same. The difference is when the update comes, there is already data in it. That's the only difference between a create and an update. It looks exactly the same, but update has data in it. A create has no data in it. So the code between create and update is super equivalent. Very, very similar, and the template is similar as well. Okay, so there we go. So we got create view, delete view, etc. Now, I'm going to focus on create view. And the key to create view is now in owner.py. Here's our form. That's pretty straightforward. In owner.py, this create view now has a little bit more to it. The list view and the detail view just inherited. So the first thing is that create view has a login required mixin. And that's because if you're going to create it, you need to be a logged in user. But to view it, you don't actually have to be a logged in user. Or if I was to, okay, let me log out here. So now I'm logged in as anybody, and so I can see all these. I can't edit any of them. I could log in if I want, and a detail view also works. So I'm completely logged out here, but add article, yeah. So add article is protected by login. So owner create view, login required mixin. And I do this because I don't want to trust the user who's writing this view to put the login required mixin here, because I am writing code right here that depends on the fact that this person is logged in. So this is like a guardian pattern. If I'm putting this in here so I don't end up with tracebacks inside my code. I don't want, if I didn't put this in if I didn't put login required mixin in owner create view, then they forgot to put owner in the views.py, they forgot to put it in an article create view, then this code would blow up. It would trace back at when I tried to set object owner to self request user. It would just blow up. Okay, so I'm extending create view, which is inheriting all the functionality, and I'm only going to override one method. This is object orientation. And you got to go read all the documentation. This documentation right here. Show you that documentation. Doop, doop, doop. So, this documentation is hard to find, and I'm sure I helped myself by doing some Stack Overflows. So that's why I put little notes at the bottom of the file, the things that took me a long time to find. So this form model mixin, and that is what they're really doing is they're giving us for these editing fields, like the update, they're saying these are the functions that are in this, and I can override them. So the one that I'm overriding is the form valid. And what that does is it basically says, here's your form, save it to the database, and set the current object for view, and then redirect to get success URL. Okay, that's its job. Except that right before it's going to save the form instance, I want to do something myself. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm saying, and the form is what's being called as the parameter, which is the form that has been pulled in from the post data and handed to me. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say save it, but don't save it to the disk. That's what commit equals false means. Don't save it to the database. Just save it into this variable object. And then I'm going to set the object owner. I'm simply going to copy the current logged in user into owner, and then I'm going to set it to the database. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to call the original form valid, passing form in as a parameter that's in this class. And that's really not going to do much, right? Because it knows that it's already been saved, so it's not going to save it again. And then what it's going to do is it's just going to do the redirect to the success URL. So this is rather late in the process of create view. It's been validated, it's checked for bad data, etc., etc., etc. And so this is like right before the redirect happens, okay? And so at a high level, my whole goal was to pause the saving of this data to the database and sneak the current logged in user into the owner column and then be done with it. And so that's the basic overriding. I'm really extending form valid to cause my code to be called right before the default code is called. Okay? Okay, so that's owner create view, and that's how once I add an article and put some stuff in and I submit, right as I submit it, and right before it's saved, there is a little field called owner that's going to be updated, boop, and it's there. And so the owner field came from this code. Now I don't have to, I could have put this in this view.py, but no, I got this really awesome creatable thing. I can write really cool code. I'm going to make hundreds of views that are, and we will through the rest of the semester do this over and over and over again. We're never going to change this file again. Okay? So now let's talk about edit. Okay, so there's two things. So here we're going to load article 6, and then we're going to put out a form that has all this stuff. So the first thing that's got to happen in owner update view is we got to check to see if this belongs to the current logged in user. Remember when I tried to go to whatever it was, 4 here, and it blew up? This is the moment where I'm going to protect it. So if we take a look at the moment where it's loading the model, do I have a link to that? Django populate. Let's go to Stack Overflow here. This one I got from Stack Overflow. Been there 10 years, probably a good one. Right. I don't like that one. Using middleware. Somewhere in here. I should make that link be a better link. Yeah. Oh, I like this one. I'm going to put a link in just to this one here. Link straight to that one. It's telling us what to do. You see, I just borrowed this right there. Form valid. Over. Oh wait, no, that was the create. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Can't find quickly where I can do this, but query set. So query set is called when it's loading ID number 4. Okay, so it's going to do a load. So query set is not the actual load, but it is the query to the database that we're going to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tweak the query set, and this query set is probably going to say, show me where ID equals 4, right? So I'm going to say, so it's going to say something like select from articles where ID equals 4. And if I just did the normal query set, it would work. But I'm going to change the query set. I'm going to change the query set. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call the default get query set in the superclass, which is the delete view class. And that's going to say query where the primary key equals 4 in this particular case. But then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another filter. This is like and owner equals the current logged in user. So so number 4 is owned by user 2, but a logged in user is 1. So this is going to be and logged in as user 1. So when it does the query, it says, give me the thing that's ID equals 4 and user ID equals 1. It's going to get no records. And so as the delete code, or the update, am I looking at delete? Update and delete are the same here. Oop. Before it does an update, it has to load the old data. And I have made it so that if you're not loading data on something that you own, then it's going to give you a 404. So it's like that wasn't found. Now 4 does exist, it just doesn't exist for the current logged in user. But 5 does, and it does belong to me, right? Now the other thing is when it's going to call get query set again, new stuff, XYZ 1 2 3. So when you submit it, it actually is going to call get query set one more time before it actually stores the data. And so let me show you. This will be kind of tricky. So I'm going to try to mess with it on 4. I'm going to try to change 4. So I'm going to go into edit screen and I'm going to inspect element. Boop. And I am going to somewhere in here find that hidden? Where's the hidden? Oh, input type hidden. Right. So that is the input type equals hidden. No, that's the middleware token. That's not the one I want to change. Oh, this is gonna, where's the, I would think that. Oh, it's because it's in this URL. I don't think if I change this to 4, it's actually going to work. But let's try it. It's probably not going to work. Yeah, that won't work. Okay, but the idea is eventually someone could mess with that post. So you still got to protect it. Right when that data is being modified, it actually does, it runs this code again, and it reads the thing, and if it can't read it, then it won't let you update it. And so that protects you from people breaking in and attacking there. And the owner delete view is the same thing. So if you go into delete, it does a get query set, and I add this filter to say, and it has to belong to the right person. So if I try to delete article 4, boom, it says I can't load article 4. But if I come over here, well, I got to log back in. So this one I think was CSEF. I think. Yeah. So now I can't delete number. But I can delete number 4 here because it kind of hides it, which is crappy, but there it is. It's deleting number 4, and away I go. So, okay, a lot of stuff. Okay, so here's the thing. We're going to use owner.py over and over and over again. We're going to write simple and elegant views, and all we have to do, ultimately, any model that we want to have this owner feature with, we add an owner column to it, then we have the views extend an owner view, and then everything's taken care of after that point. So it's really, we're not going to change a line of this. It's really cool. We're going to use it in project after project, on table after table after table, right? Because this can apply to different models. It's just this one happens to be applying to an article model. So I've built a super generic owner capability that I can use over and over. And just take your time, watch this more than once, review object orientation, figure this out. It's hard for me when I'm teaching to explain why object orientation is cool. Object orientation is cool because it can let you write these super elegant and very reliable. The fewer lines of code you write, the more reliable it is. But the harder it is to understand, because the magic is here in this object-oriented pattern. And again, it took me a long time to write this stuff, but now it's really gorgeous and really reusable. So keep thinking about object orientation. We're going to be doing a lot going forward in terms of object orientation. Okay? So I hope this helps. Cheers. Hello, and welcome to another screen recording for Django for Everybody. In this one, we're going to play with the bootstrap menu. So what's a bootstrap menu? A bootstrap menu is a common bit that's going to be on a whole different set of pages. And so in this particular menu, we're going to have like a page 1, a page 2, a page 3 inside of a drop-down. And then we have kind of like a login drop-down. I'm already logged in, I'll log out. And then it switches when I'm logged in. When I'm logged in, it shows my gravatar. When I want to log in, I'll log in as csev dj42 exclamation. Ooh, come on. Actually, I think let's call this DJ free. I think will work. Yeah, and so that shows a little picture based on your email address. And so I'll show you how all these things work. But again, we're talking multiple pages. Now, the couple things you'll see is we are changing the highlight of this. And so if I was to do a view source, these are completely different pages. And what you see is on the highlighted one, where was I? Page 2 is the highlighted one. I have a list tag for page 1, and then a list tag class equals active for page 2, and that's what makes this highlighted. So these are different pages. So in this menu, we have to know what current page we're on, so we can look at the request path. It's page 2, so we know to put active on the page 2 one. So there'll be some logic inside this navigation bar. So let's take a look at some of the code. So I'm really going to do this all in templates. So you see I'm using template view in the urls.py, and I just have I got 3 pages that are all going to render the menu, menu/main menu HTML. And so there's nothing in the views of any importance. It's because I just got template view that I'm using. So let's take a quick look at the actual menu. So it's really quite simple, because one of the things you're going to do is you're going to have these pages and lots of them. So you don't want all of this HTML that's needed for this header sitting in every one of the pages. So we will use the extends mechanism in a template to say, oh, let's go and grab base menu.html and start with that. So we've been working with base bootstrap, and bootstrap uses all kinds of pages, but it doesn't have a menu. And it has areas that you can replace. We've been working with base bootstrap for a while, but now we want to do the menu. So what we're going to see is, instead of extending base bootstrap, we're going to extend base menu. And that's our own local file. So you'll note that base menu extends base bootstrap. And this is the same base bootstrap we've been using all along. And what it basically does, this app tags, we'll talk about that in a second. That's how the gravatar works. It is going to override this nav bar block, and you'll see that this goes all the way down. That's on just one big nav tag. And so the nav bar comes in right here, right after we say div class equals container. And then we have this welcome, we have these flash messages, area for flash alerts. Those are the messages that say, congratulations, you added a file. Congratulations, you deleted a file. And then the block content, and then the end of this container div. So block content is what we're going to override here. And the block nav bar is what we're overriding in menu. So block nav bar is being overridden. So we have one template that extends another template that extends another template. And so we're, just like any kind of object-oriented, we're sort of specializing and further specializing and further specializing. So bootstrap can be used with or without a menu, but then once we add the menu to base bootstrap, then we have base menu. Okay? So this is the top part of the page. And every page simply extends base menu and then puts whatever content it is. It says just, I would like a menu here. So let's take a look at the menu. So the first thing you do is you go, I'm using Bootstrap. So if you go read up on Bootstrap, it'll tell you this is how you make a menu. And it tells you how to use the nav tag and what classes to put on the nav tag, how the container works, and the header and the brand and all these little classes. I didn't make this up. This is what Bootstrap said. This is how Bootstrap makes it pretty and dark and curvy little things, and they all line up nice, etc., etc. So I had to read that, and so this pretty much is taken straight from some sample code, except for one little thing, and that is the mechanism by which I, on different pages, can highlight which page I'm on, which is a very common something you want to do in menus. And so we have a UL tag, and the UL tag is this list of things. And then you have an LI. And what we're doing here, this is a weird little bit of Django template language. We are causing the URL function to be called with a parameter of menu:main to give us a path. So, boop, right? Menu:main is /menu. If you look at URLs, it's menu:main is this view, and it's the path that's just /menu. And so this is like an assignment statement in the Django template language, and it leaves the value in XYZ. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put an if statement in. And all these if statements have been multi-line, but you don't have to make a multi-line. That is an if statement. If request.getFullPath is equal to XYZ, the variable I just computed, then emit class equals active. Otherwise, emit nothing. So again, now if we take a look at the source code, we view the source of this, view the source of the menu, and we scroll down, we will see that the home has a class of active and the other ones do not have a class of active. And that's why home has this little extra dark box, just to give a little clue to our user that that's the one that we're working with. And so this little pattern is repeated over and over to see if we're on page 1, if we're on page 2, and then we do the construct the drop down, and the drop down is just, again, this comes straight from the Bootstrap, right? And so we have the drop down, we have another URL, we have a little page 3 link here, and it shows up, and this is just the text to make a cool drop down. Okay, and that's just Bootstrap. Now we have a list that is the left side of the nav bar, and now we're starting the right side of the nav bar, which is also an unnumbered list. So this is cool. So we basically have two versions. One is if the user is authenticated, and then else if the user is not authenticated. So if the user is not authenticated, let's go ahead and log out here. If the user is not authenticated, we are just going to calculate a URL to the login page, which is /account/login. Let's pass a next to say come back here, right? Now, come back to the main menu. So if you go to login, it will say next equals, and it's come back here, right? And so that you construct that and you pass that login in. So I can do DJ free and I can log in and it will come back to the main menu, even though I clicked on it over here. Okay, but now we're in this page, and in this case, user.isAuthenticated is true. So we're going to construct a drop down. And then this shows the drop down and takes the drop down out. And we're going to, in the drop down, we're going to say log out. But in the page, right, so this is the drop down menu. So that's the menu within the drop down that we turn on and off with a caret. But here's the gravatar. So this is an image tag, source equals, and then we have, oops, undo that. Then we have a double curly brace user piped through gravatar with a size of 60 pixel gravatar. Okay, So that is making this little image. So if we do it, let's do a quick inspect on that image. Inspect. Okay, let's just do view source. This image is www.gravatar.com avatar / this long thing. Okay, and if you go read on Avatar, Gravatar is a service. It's actually a Google service that you register your email, and this here is a hash of your email, and then that looks up and then gives you back this little URL. So if I was to take this URL right here, oh, don't do that. Just that's what I want. I take this URL and I put it https:// it shows a little tiny picture of me, right? It shows a little tiny picture of me. But the question is, how did this get generated? It got generated by passing the user object, which is the same as user.is authenticated, except I'm piping it through a tag that I invented called Gravatar. And again, this is code that is going to run just kind of like this URL code or whatever these things are, right? So what we have is we have a thing where we've loaded these app tags, okay? And so app tags are tags that we as developers can create. And then we can do things in it. So here's what's in app tags. So this is how you make a Gravatar. You take the user's email, you strip it, throw away any white space, you convert it to lowercase, you encode it in UTF-8, and then you use the MD5, which is a hashing function, and make a hex digest. And that hex digest, this is an MD5, this long ugly string 2D0A2F51. That is a one-way hash of the email address. And if you go put that in to a thing, then if you know it, so that you can't figure out a person's email address from their Gravatar, but you can from an email address figure out what the Gravatar is. So this is not actually revealing the person's email address. So that's why we're using a one-way hash, an MD5 of the email address. And then I just construct the URL, put the hash in the right place, put the size, that 60 parameter. If you take a look, where are we at? This :60 is the second parameter to this code we wrote, so that 60 is size. So that's why it says 60 right there, s equals 60 right there. And then I'm going to, use the format. I'm going to use format, and I'll put the hash in and the size in and return that as a string, and that goes all the way back here and then replaces this double curly brace. So all those double curly braces and piping, that's just code somebody wrote. And in this case, the Gravatar code is code that I wrote and we wrote, or you could write, and that produces this URL. So it's a convenient way to put that URL in there, and it's really pretty and it works out very cool. So you write this code and it's in home template tags app tags.py, and then you basically have to load it in your menu. Where are we at? You have to go get app tags, and away you go. So that sums up how you can make a nice bootstrap menu and put it on your page through an extension menu, an extension mechanism. So we're going to extend it, and then boom, you make a page. Then you extend it again, and that puts it on the next page. So it's pretty easy. It's pretty straightforward. There's a lot of HTML, but luckily I hand that to you in the DJ free samples, and you're not going to have to modify that. It'll pretty much just work. You'll change what's in the menu. You'll be like putting different things in as the links and stuff. So you'll be working with this, but in general, most of the hard work is done. And as always, you can take a look at DJ free samples, just like we always do for inspiration. So I hope you found this helpful. Cheers. Hello and welcome to another walkthrough for Django for Everybody. In this walkthrough, we are going to play with crispy forms. Crispy forms are a good example of how Django just has something and you plug it in and things just get better and it doesn't take much work on your part. So the simple thing is let's take a look at a boring form. This is the kind of form we've been doing in our CRUD, and I'm using a form to do it, and all I have to say is let's just make that a crispy form. And now things are pretty. They got all these colors. They got the highlight. There's a bunch of CSS. Forms are actually, the markup of forms is actually surprisingly complex. If we take a look at the markup in this crispy form, it's got some CSS in there, and it's just, there's a lot to it. So if we look, we got all these classes and fancy stuff. And so Crispy takes care of that for us. And the key, I'll show you in a second, the key difference is just not that big of a deal. So let me walk through the code. So here is my Crispy URLs. So what we're going to do is use the same view and just switch between two templates, one called boring and one called awesome. Crispy is Urban Dictionary for awesome or cool or whatever. I'm not sure how cool of a word cool it is, but it doesn't matter. This is a riff on some of the forms code. This is a real basic form. I don't have any models in this one, and so I'm just using forms and putting them on the screen. And so I just got a simple form with a string, mileage, and purchase date. And that validator so I can make some mistake. And this is just a view, just similar to other things we've done in forms. I'm making a class that extends view, and I've got to set this template name to none, because really what I want to do is I want to pick the template name here in urls.py. Something about how Django works, you've got to put this in so that then you can override it here. And I like putting templates in here and success URLs in here when I possibly can. It just seems like the routing is going on here in urls.py, and so I like doing that. So you'll note there's only one view, but we're doing two things, and that's because we're just taking self template name and doing the exact same thing. And so the boring form, it basically is loading some old data, making a form, pulling in the initial data for that, and then passing it into the template and then rendering the template. The post, if I submit the post, this would be saving the data. You read the post data, check to see if the form is valid. If it's not, send an error message. And then if we'll see a flash message, I'll show you that in a bit. And then we just redirect to a reverse. So let's just see, for example, what happens if we violate a rule. We get this, please enter 2 or more characters. And that's something we've been doing before, and that's just kind of the get post of an edit form. So let's take a look at the template that creates this, right? We're going to do base bootstrap, put a title in, override a welcome. So if you take a look at base bootstrap, I should add a link here to show you base bootstrap. cd.vi home templates base bootstrap. So base bootstrap has a number of different blocks that we can override. The title block, the head block, which is some material to put before the /head, a navigation bar if we want it, a welcome message, and then we'll talk about these little flash messages in a second, like alert messages, and then the content, and then some footer. Maybe we want to put some JavaScript in at the bottom of a page. And so we've got these hot spots in Bootstrap, base Bootstrap HTML. So we're going to extend it. We're going to set the title. I'm going to put an H1, which is like a welcome. It's the beginning of the body, and then there's going to be some messages that come in here in a second. And then here's our normal block. So we got a form. We have to put the CSRF token in. That just puts out that input hidden tag so that we avoid cross-site request forgery, CSRF. And we're going to use form as table. Form is the context variable. As table basically renders it as a series of table rows. And then /table. And so if we do an inspect element here, let's do page source because my screen's too small so that you can see it on a sweet little mobile. So it's got the table, and then it's using TRs and THs and /THs, and just kind of putting it out. Not a lot of CSS. It's using the table so that these things can be lined up. That's what it tried to do. It has some aesthetic, and away it goes. Okay, and so the form as table, like if you make a mistake, this ends up view page source. Close that one. You see that this is just another, somewhere here, where's the error message? Yeah, it's just another table row, and it uses the table, and the table helps it do all this alignment. But it's not very pretty, okay? And so then we have the table, we have our submit buttons and our cancel buttons, and we end our form. And so we've been doing this now for a while, just making boring forms. So let's start by, so if I go to awesome, so I go to cancel here, and I go to the awesome form, then I am going to render, right, crispy, awesome HTML instead. And so let's go there. So it looks almost the same. So here's boring, and here is awesome. So most of it is identical. It's extending base bootstrap, it's setting up a title, it's putting up a welcome chunk. But then we have this. So this is, you know, when you're using a curly brace % load crispy form tags, that's like running code basically, like the URL, this curly brace URL crispy main.py. That's running code. It's calling it's like the reverse. It's calling reverse to compute a URL given a string as a parameter. So this is sort of like making sure crispy is loaded for this page. If you do not do that, then this curly brace form vertical bar crispy will not work. Then the rest of this form is identical, except we just don't tell the form to render itself as a table. We use vertical bar crispy here, form vertical bar crispy, and this is called a filter. And we'll see another filter in an upcoming video. Well, we'll make actually one of these filters ourselves. So we're taking the form object and piping it through a bit of code from the crispy library. And so that renders, it's not in a table, that renders all of the HTML for title, purchase date, and all that stuff. And it has all the CSS and makes it all gorgeous, right? So that's what it does. So form crispy does all that, and that's the main difference. Other than loading crispy form tags, that's the key thing. Everything else is the same. We had a table, form as table and /table, and then we load crispy form tags, and then we just pipe form vertical bar crispy, and everything else is the same. And then we get this beautiful crispy form. And it makes things consistent. So you just use crispy forms. I'm not saying you can't build your own form system, but for me as a software developer, I like starting out with something that looks half pretty, and then away it goes. So that's crispy forms. That's how you use crispy forms. But let me show you a little bit more about how that works. Let me close a couple of my windows. So one of the things that happens is you've got to load in your settings.py, you've got to add crispy forms to your installed app. So that's when you're, so if you do like Python 3 manage py check, you've been doing this a lot, it loads up all these things. And so it's checking and loading, and it's reading through this settings.py, it's loading all of these things. Like this humanize is a thing that we'll talk about that later. Django extensions, we'll talk about that later. All these things we'll talk about later, but crispy forms is a code library that you're at that point pulling in. So if you don't put that in, then crispy forms is going to blow up. It's going to blow up right here because it can't load the crispy form tags. Okay, so that's the first thing. But then you have to install this, and you probably don't recall, in the very beginning, I had you check out, let me go to that, www.dj, well, I got it right here, djfree.com, lessons, installing Django and Python anywhere. So if I look at the assignment specification you did a very long time ago, You make a virtual environment, you go into your virtual environment, and then I told you to go grab DJ Freeze samples. This is in the very beginning of the class, and I told you to pip install -r requirements.txt. And requirements.txt is a file that looks like this. And what it does is pip reads this file and downloads a bunch of extensions. Django Crispy Forms, Django Filter, Django REST Framework. And so literally now for weeks, you have had these all, it's installing it into your virtual environment. And that's why sometimes if you run Python check and you're not in your virtual environment, it'll blow up. But then I say, oh, well, go into your virtual environment and it starts working, right? I need to run server because I'm running this locally. Okay, so because you installed these things you installed the requirements into your Django 3 virtual environment. And so that's why when it reads the settings.py and sees Crispy Forms in the installed apps, then it's like, oh, crap, you know, I don't have it, but that's because you're running the loading of this file not in your virtual environment that has all that stuff installed. And if you're doing this outside the class, you will want to make a virtual environment and then do the pip install for requirements.txt. So that's two prerequisites. Edit settings.py, make sure you have Crispy Forms in your requirements, and then pip install from the requirements. And then it's pretty simple. You just load the Crispy Form tags and then pipe the form object in a template through the Crispy filter, and then you will get gorgeous forms without hardly even trying, and you just keep using it. So that's our summary of Crispy Forms. I hope you find it useful. We'll pretty much use Crispy Forms from this point forward in the course. Cheers.